I wonder, do members of the government ever feel ashamed? I felt ashamed when I read the obsequious letters of the Minister for Finance when applying for assistance to Messrs. Juncker, Reynolds, Wren and Trichet, and separately to Mr. Strauss-Kahn of the IMF. The first sentence in both your letters, Minister, reads as follows: Ireland faces an economic crisis without parallel in its recent history. The problems of low growth, doubt about fiscal sustainability, and a fragile banking sector are now feeding on each other, undermining confidence. What a self-indictment. Your critics couldn't have put it better. An absolute indictment of your own policies in both of the letters which you wrote to our new masters in Europe and in Washington.
Here, absolutely.
You know, if it wasn't so serious, it would be kind of funny, because when you read the letters, they sound like confessions beaten out of you, that you're reading a thriller. It's like as if they waterboarded you on Merrion Street and made you sign the letters. Or maybe they were motivated by a kind of mock humility of the Gambine culture to think that you'd get the 85 billion more easily. If it was a handout. Is this a hit me now with the child in my arms intervention?
Noonan, without interruption.
The third and biggest mistake of the government is to think that the purpose of all the pain and suffering is to restore Ireland to where it was in Bertie Ahern's time. The dream of restoring a last Camelot is always a huge mistake. Bertie Ahern's Ireland is dead and gone, and it will never be restored. The Galway tent is gone. The fast trips to Florida are gone. The subsidised travel out of the SIP2 flush fund is gone. The flipping.
Deputy Gogarty, you will allow members to address this House without interfering.
The flipping of property in the fashionable pubs of Dublin after work on a Friday will not happen again. The bubble cannot be reinflated, and the government policy designed to restore lost times cannot succeed. We need a new Ireland, a lean and more generous Ireland, where we support strong families and strong communities, where volunteerism is again honoured, and where people work hard and are rewarded for their hard work. We need a fair and just society, where the test of any policy is the answer to two very simple questions. Is it a fair policy, and does it protect the most vulnerable in society? It is against those objectives that I intend to measure this budget. The Minister was very sparse in his detail today. You know, 2 minutes before you sat down, we got a resume of the main features of the budget. So it's difficult to know very quickly, when you don't read out the major detail of the budget, what exactly the full implications are. But if we take the public expenditure area first, of the 6 billion in correction to which you're committed, 4 billion of that is in public expenditure cuts, and 2 billion then is in taxation. Now, it's very difficult to know what the expenditure cuts are in these documents presented. But we had an experience in the olden days when Mr. Haughey was king of the country, when a budget was presented and we came into government and we found the figures didn't add up, and more importantly, there were no policy decisions taken to underpin the expenditure cuts. Now, Taoiseach, you'll be in here tomorrow. I want you to state clearly what the policy decisions are which underpin the expenditure cuts which you have registered in the tables at the back here. I hope you're not faking it up, but I want you to come out and explain what the expenditure cuts are. I notice, Minister, that in the Green Book, the 4-year plan, there's a figure of the sale of state assets at 700 million euros. And I noticed in the tables at the back here today, that figure is rounded off to 660 million euros. There wasn't one reference to that in your speech. Now, I'm told that comes from your intention to sell Bord Gáis, that you have permission from the European Commission to pay this into the exchequer by way of dividend, and yet you're totally silent on it in your checks today. Now, when I see things like that, I worry about the accuracy of your figures. You made no reference to reduction in capital spending today. Yet, a quick look at the tables at the back would suggest you're taking about 1.8 billion out in capital spending. You haven't nominated the key projects in those cutbacks. Is Metro North proceeding, for example? What are the heavy hits? What are the heavy hits? What are the heavy? You'll be walking home, you'll have no metro. Be walking to Swords, you will. Walking to Swords, you will.
Allow Deputy Noonan to make his contribution.
So since 2/3 of the adjustment to get to 6 billion derives from public expenditure cuts, I believe there's an onus on the government, and since the Minister for Finance didn't do it, the Taoiseach could come into the House tomorrow morning and spell out the policy decisions which are taken, which underpin expenditure cuts up to 4 billion euro, because the Finance Minister has not done it today. When I was preparing the alternative budget proposals in the last couple of weeks, which we announced on Friday, we ran the proposal by the Department of Finance, who do an independent costing, of these proposals. The Department of Finance were of the view that the tax-neutral position was now in excess of 9%, and that if one wanted to collect extra income, one would have to go beyond that. Now, curiously, in your speech today, while you talked about introducing the universal social charge, you never nominated the rate at which it was being introduced. Now, that is not fair, Minister. When you present a budget, you need to be transparent, and you cannot fool the people by announcing a universal social charge and not nominating in your speech the rate at which it will apply. Now, the second issue is back in the small print. It wasn't in the speech. Now, as well, Minister, on your income tax provision, you don't have a high regard for carers, because the tax credit for carers is down from 900 to 810, and on top of that, you've cut the carers allowance. You didn't exempt it like the old age pension. You've cut the carers allowance as well as cutting the tax credit. And I'll tell you, carers have it tough, and it's one of the vulnerable areas that you should have protected, and you didn't protect it. I'm glad that you exempted the 2 old age pensions, the contributory and non-contributory, from your social welfare cuts, but you didn't exempt widows. Like, why would you distinguish between old age pensions and widows' pensions? Under what kind of social compass would suggest that widows can afford the cut and old age pensioners can't? Like, why would you do that? And why would you cut blind pensions and invalidity pensions and carers' pensions? And the only exemption, that was forced on you is the pension. That, you see, this is one of the things I don't understand. Why a government would be so socially blind as to include vulnerable persons, where the total tax take is so small anyway. Like, you'd have got most of what you wanted from the main social welfare headings, and yet you hit invalidity pension, you hit blind pension, you hit carers pension, you hit widows pension, and that's what we mean at this side of the House when we say you don't really care about the most vulnerable, and our policy is to protect the vulnerable in our budget cuts at this side of the House. You have cut job seekers by €8. You have made no increase in the child-dependent allowance and social welfare. It's the same as last year, and I think that's worth remarking. Child benefit is down by €10 per child for the first child and for the second child. Minister, what have you got against third children? In your speech, you said that there'd be an extra €10 cut from the child benefit of the third child. Only. The fourth child won't be cut. The fifth child won't be cut. The 16th child won't be cut. The 20th child won't be cut.
Just keep You give away the
Like did some third child beat you up coming home from school when you were a young fella? What's this conspiracy against third children? And I have no vested interest. I have no vested interest. I'm a fourth child myself.
What happens if after the second child you give birth to twins?
Deputy Shatter, please.
Fine Gael want the IMF out of here. We are an educated, talented, accomplished people, well capable of running our own affairs. At times of crisis, we tend to turn to the heroes of the past for inspiration. To Collins and Griffith, and to De Valera and to Lemass. I know that members on all sides of the House do that. Therefore, I will finish by reference to a quotation attributed to Michael Collins, which we could all ponder. Collins said, "Give us the future. We have had enough of the past. Give us back our country to live in, to grow in, to love." Thank you very much.